Thank you very much for the many comments we got on the Wokeism video. Most of the comments, as expected, were political, but there were also a few comments on what I think is a central idea of the video, a more existential idea. And this was expressed very nicely by Brian M., and I'm going to quote his comment. He writes, "The thing that strikes me as someone who's spent huge amounts of time in woke internet spaces is how much of it is about building personal legitimacy." And this issue of building personal legitimacy of an identity, both personally and in organizations, like, for instance, the CIA recruiting ad shows the building of legitimacy of an organization, seems to me to be quite important for wokeism. And obviously, when the CIA is getting publicly woke, this is not just about promoting diversity in the CIA, but it's also primarily about building legitimacy for oneself. Now, building personal legitimacy is by no means just a woke phenomenon, and not just the CIA is doing this. I think it's basically at the center of what everyone does, including me right now, and what all of us do, especially when we do things very seriously, such as religion, politics, philosophy, or even in personal relationships. What is new today, I think, is that personal legitimacy is increasingly built through profiles or profilicity. So, in short, the point of an analysis of profilicity is something like an attempt at an existentialism of the 21st century, of which political analysis is one part. Now, one more thing. I was pointing out how wokeism is rooted in Western individualism, and some viewers reacted to that. I'm going to quote two. Britannica Politica says, "The idea that wokeism is individualistic is an absurd criticism. How can being obsessed with identities such as race, gender, and so forth be individual?" And MTTSLBR writes, "One thing I do not agree with is that wokeism is about being me. It supplants the individual's identity for that of a group identity." Actually, there's no disagreement here. I fully agree with both viewers. Individualism, just as its twin, authenticity, is deeply paradoxical for exactly the reasons that those two viewers pointed out. And I think wokeism shows this paradox very clearly. Maybe I should have pointed that out more clearly myself in the wokeism video. I think that the increasing obviousness of this paradox of individualism is one of the reasons, maybe even a main reason, why we moved on from the individualism-related authenticity paradigm to one of profilicity. So today I'll talk about precisely this shift from authenticity to profilicity, and I'll do so in the format of a book launch. You and Your Profile, Identity After Authenticity, that Paul D'Ambrosio and I wrote, was just recently published in May. And we had a book launch here at the University of Macau a few weeks ago, and some people attended it online. Thank you very much for those who did this. Unfortunately, the quality of the recording was not good at all. So we decided against our initial plan not to post it on our channel, but to do a new recording today. As in the warnings that you see at the beginning of our videos, of course, this video too is supposed to direct your attention to the book that Paul and I wrote. And of course, we'll be happy if you actually read the book or even get it. So there's also, in a matter of full declaration and commodification element to this. What I'm going to do today is I will read a few sections, and I'm inviting your comments and critiques. And then we're planning to do the usual Q&A that is part of a book launch in response to your comments in a later video. Superhost, welcoming profiles. Recently, we booked a house for a month in Sweden on Airbnb. Monthly bookings on Airbnb needed to be paid for at the time of reservation and were not refundable. After the booking was confirmed, the host got in touch. There was an error and the price information was incorrect, she said. Normally, she rents the house for at least twice the rate we already paid. Could we cancel, she hoped. It was fine by us. We told her, however, we could not do this ourselves because we would lose all the money we already paid. She said that she couldn't cancel either. Cancellation on her side would make her lose her Superhost status for 1 year. She would rather allow us to stay for a month and lose money than let her profile suffer. Of course, we would be extremely welcome to stay at her place, she added, no matter which rate we paid. In the liberal West, the Chinese social credit system has been thoroughly condemned. This system, which is currently in various trial stages with different versions being tested in different areas, assigns a credibility rating to people based on, for instance, their repayment of loans, their traffic violation record, or their record on minor public misdemeanors such as jaywalking, littering, or smoking where prohibited. It's typically portrayed as a dystopian Orwellian surveillance monster, as reflecting the authoritarian nature of the Chinese government and demonstrating its lack of respect for individual freedom and privacy. Many critics do acknowledge that similar systems already exist in the West, in the form of credit ratings, police records, and so forth. But their integration into one state-controlled whole, it is alleged, makes a crucial difference. It gives too much power to the state, is too invasive, and impedes human autonomy. In China, public opinion about the social credit system is not at all negative. Research has shown surprisingly high approval ratings, which we also found when speaking to friends, colleagues, and students. The system, it is argued, helps improve public trust in a society where it is perceived as critically lacking. Rather than insisting on privacy rights, Chinese people tend to emphasize an urgency for making business interactions and public behavior more reliable, more functional, and more transparent. From a bourgeois Western perspective, such an attitude seems problematic. Are Chinese people really willing to compromise their individual rights and subject themselves to constant supervision just so that people's manners and traffic congestion get better? One rarely hears such qualms about Airbnb in the West. Here it seems perfectly okay for the millions of renters to distinguish between hosts and superhosts. And not only this, as our own booking experience shows, those advertising themselves on the platform may also willingly and actively implement this distinction. Of course, there are economic reasons for doing this. A superhost will get more customers than others and may be able to charge more as well. Along with this capitalist rationale, we feel identity is at stake. The tone of a message suggested to us that our Swedish superhost had internalized her status to such a degree that she found the idea of losing it, not only economically, but also personally uncomfortable. We felt that her whole Airbnb persona, the way she interacted with us through the website, was from start to finish put in the service of verifying her superhost profile. Superhost is not merely a business category. It can deeply affect identity. Which Airbnb customer really wants to get to know their host authentically, like they might know their siblings, friends, or lovers? And which Airbnb hosts would be better off if they were always their true self when dealing with a different person every other night, saying what they really think about guests and actually answering the question, "How are you today?" In fact, most of us use ratings and rely on algorithms that churn out rankings in academics, in gaming, for insurance, in financing, for shopping, for social media, in tourism, you name it. And we're rather comfortable doing so on a daily basis. In a society where we need to interact with people whom we have no time, no desire, and no need to know authentically or sincerely. We often know one another through profilicity or profile-based identity. This works. We are in it together. The cause is the profile. The real issue, including issues in politics and the economy, is not a non-personal and merely objective cause, but the formation, curation, and presentation of identity, or building personal legitimacy, as Brian M. put it. Political issues become significant and are perceived as vital once they are merged with a quest for identity. In this way, they are internalized and emotionally charged. They really mean something to us. Identification in the form of public self-profiling makes politics relevant. And it can provide marketing opportunities in the economy, as for an Airbnb host. The 19th century German philosopher Max Stirner suspected any dedication to a cause to be an inauthentic form of self-denial. Truly authentic people would have no cause at all other than their own self, he stipulated. We suspect something different. The more intensely one identifies with a cause, the more the cause is also the self. In the 2009 ClimateGate case, private correspondence between climate scientists at the University of East Anglia was hacked and exposed. It was alleged that the correspondence showed that the scientists had conspired to repress data showing that global warming was not taking place. After the allegations had been shown to be false, the scientists had not committed any data fraud and temperatures were actually rising. A friend who is an ecological activist expressed his relief. He was happy to hear, he said, that the climate scientists had not been lying. He thereby also unintentionally revealed a paradoxical happiness about climate change. Shouldn't he have been rather sad about the fact that it was once more confirmed that scientific data showed that the Earth is heating up? Later in this book, we will turn to the strange case of the allegedly self-inflicted hate crime by actor and black and gay rights activist Jesse Smollett, and to a reaction of one of our colleagues to it. This colleague, being very much in favor of minority rights and causes, expressed her disappointment about this hate crime not actually having taken place, since she much preferred Smollett not to be exposed as a liar. The two cases follow the exact same paradoxical logic. Behind an ecologist's delight about the news that climate change is really happening, and a civil rights activist's frustration that a reported hate crime apparently did not occur, lies a strong identification with a cause. Identification with a cause becomes so central and primary that, strangely enough, one prefers news that the problem is really as bad as one fears it is, since this affirms the value of the cause and thereby of one's identification with it. If climate change or civil rights should turn out to be no longer an issue, the identity of those identifying with these causes would be undermined and deflated. One's profile, built and maintained with sometimes a lifetime of effort, and in which one is thus deeply invested, would lose its social validity and become obsolete. The stronger the identification with the cause, the more the care for the cause also becomes care for oneself. Needless to say, but perhaps actually not so needless, otherwise we wouldn't say it, this mechanism is the same for many ideals, principles, views, and values, both progressive and conservative, left and right. Islamophobes would be utterly frustrated by a lack of Islamist terrorist attacks. Sincerity, authenticity, and profilicity. In earlier times, identity was typically assigned by the social roles one was born into. Along with birth came not only one's gender, but also one's tribal or ethnic identity, one's social class, one's profession, and one's religion. Identification then typically consisted in committing to the roles people found themselves in by embracing the norms and internalizing the values attached to these roles. This is what we call, following Lionel Trilling, sincerity, a mental and social method of achieving identity based on sincere role enactment. The family was often the core social unit within which sincere identity formation was experienced, developed, and confirmed. This image of a traditional Chinese family illustrates the power of role-based identity. It shows how, literally, roles assign places and positions. Females are supposed to be on the right, males on the left. Dress indicates gender, age, and social status. Importantly, role designations indicate a bodily regime as well. They determine who gets to sit and who gets to stand, the length of one's hair, or throughout many centuries in China, the length of a woman's feet. Without intellectual and emotional commitment, such often brutal physiological and behavioral or cultural regimes could have hardly been maintained in society or endured by individuals. In modernity, society became more dynamic. Identity then became a problem. It was no longer almost ready-made at birth, but something to be discovered. Traditional role identities prescribed by society began to appear as external facades imposed on people whose real self was to be found somewhere underneath. The conception of the social role as a mask covering up one's true identity became a prime metaphor, along with a newly emerging quest for what now seemed to be the foundation of identity: authenticity. The image of an authentic self as the true face of a person that comes to the fore once one's social masks are taken away is still popular. In authenticity, one's face is expected to accurately express one's actual self. A mask that is no mask. One's true self has to be found or created. That this may be an impossible task is indicated by the suspiciously frequent use of tautological phrases such as truly authentic in self-help manuals on authenticity. How can we trust authenticity? Did we present our real face to others? Did they show their true faces to us? Who can say for sure? What does an entirely original face look like? And if it looks like something, how is it entirely original? What authentic hairstyle genuinely represents your true self? Such questions are impossible to answer. Moreover, not only self-help manuals, but also more elaborated philosophical guides on how to become authentic eventually face a core paradox. Once one follows the advice to make one's own path, one is already following a path recommended by others. The inherent self-contradiction of authenticity, its insistence on a false individualism, suggesting that everyone ought to be unique and original, becomes most obvious when it is used as a marketing tool. You're supposed to make yourself when you buy a Nike shirt. But, as Elena Esposito put it, nothing is as unoriginal as the attempt to be original. Just as sincerity lost its grip on society and individuals with a shift toward modernity, authenticity is now fading away along with more recent changes. Today, Society has switched almost entirely to second-order observation. This means, in line with sociologist Niklas Luhmann's usage of the term, we do not simply look at people or issues directly, but rather at how they are seen publicly by others. To judge a restaurant, we look first at its reviews on Yelp, and later judge our experience in reference to what we read. We have developed the ability to judge products in terms of brands, and people in terms of their profiles, and academics in terms of their citations. We observe first how things are seen. Learning to see in this way, we also learn to show ourselves in this very same manner. We form identity through creating profiles. Profiles are images of ourselves presented for second-order observation. By looking at them, others can see how we like to be seen as being seen. Thus we create and show pictures that look like this one. Here is no pretense of authenticity, no attempt to represent a mask that is no mask. It is clear to those who understand a picture like this that it is neither taken nor posted spontaneously. It is not meant to document an authentic moment in one's life to be stored in an autobiographical album, or as part of a deeply reflective self-narrative. It is meant to communicate with anyone, which can strangely enough include all those in the photo. Such pictures are contributions to identity assembly. They are publicly presented for validation. If the photo is seen and liked, those who posted it get the go-ahead to continue displaying their personas they presented. Second-order observation. The two pictures posted by the theme park guy Stefan Zwanzger on his blog thethemeparkguy.com were taken at the very same spot at a Chinese theme park, the first one in 2010 and the second one in 2017. They show people watching a performance. In the first picture, they observe it in the mode of first-order observation. They look directly at it. In the second picture, everyone adopts second-order observation. That is, everyone except the small child in the foreground, who is apparently not yet well-versed in observing observations. Rather than watching the performance directly, the 2017 audience looks at it through their cell phones, thereby seeing it as it is being seen or will be seen by those who will watch the show as posted on a social media account or other online platforms. It might be tempting, following a common critique of cell phone and social media use, to analyze the two pictures in terms of a decay of authenticity. However, this is not our intention here. Our point is simply to provide a concrete illustration of second-order observation. As opposed to seeing and being seen directly, second-order observation sees something or oneself as being seen. It observes something or oneself indirectly by observing it from the perspective of other observers. Thereby, the complexity of the observation is significantly increased, as is shown by the difference between the attention and tension in the faces of the 2017 audience as opposed to the relaxation and joy of the 2010 spectators. In second-order observation, both the object and its observer are taken into account and are simultaneously considered. It is not so easy. In his introduction to systems theory, Luhmann states that at the end of the 20th century, basically all social systems have adopted second-order observation. More simply put, this is to say, Luhmann says, you get your information on the facts merely by looking at what others have to say about it. This is indeed how we know about global warming, economic trends, Oscar winners, or the latest controversies in politics. Truly, as Luhmann says, we no longer need to know what the world is like once we know how it is being seen, and once we are capable of orienting ourselves in the realm of second-order observation. A summary. Sincerity demands commitment to roles. The outside is real, and the inside must back it up honestly. Otherwise, it is considered a dishonest fake. Authenticity demands the pursuit of originality. The inside is real, and the outside must be an accurate representation of it. Otherwise, it is considered a hypocritical facade. Profilicity demands the curation of profiles. The outside is real, and the inside must be truly invested in it. Otherwise, it is considered a deceptive fraud. Everyone is genuinely pretending. Every mode of identity makes us experience selfhood, but none really matches up all the incongruent dimensions of human life. To realize that we are genuine pretenders opens up a critical awareness of our contingencies. It eases identity. Thanks for bearing with me. I will not talk more about genuine pretending here, which is our existentialist response to contemporary identity technologies. But we have another video on this, and maybe you're interested in watching that. Maybe you're even interested in reading the book. Maybe we'll get some questions on that, on genuine pretending, in the Q&A. I'd like to invite you again, sending in comments, and then we'll do another Q&A video. Thanks again for watching.